Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to an evening with the experts. Tonight, we are privileged to have a panel of both international and local experts, all I would say a part of our wide Myco family. They're here at our disposal this evening to offer a lot of advice to us and to answer the many questions that we have about autism. So I'm just going to kick off by introducing our panel of experts. We have Dr. Pauline Watson Campbell. Um, Dr. Campbell may not be able to show her picture right now, but throughout the course, you may be able to see her. Oh, I see her now. So Dr. Pauline Watson Campbell is a pediatric occupational therapist with over 45 years of experience. She's also an educational psychologist. And she's also the founder and executive director of the McCam Child Development Center and the Resource Center, which is the first inclusive early childhood program in the region. We have with us Miss Brittany Aiken, our speech and language pathologist at the center. She comes with us with over 12 years of experience, and her areas of specialty include early intervention, autism spectrum disorder, alternative and augmentative communication, and parent coaching. We also have Miss Jamie Hodaro. Ms. Hodaro holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology from York University and a Master's in Special Education from the University of California, Santa Barbara. Now, she is one of our leading experts on behavior analysis. Right, so she's applied behavior analysis, sorry, in the country, and she's a board certified behavior analyst and has been since 2012. She practices in Kingston and she's the founder of Linked Child Therapy, and she provides ABA services to children between the ages of 18 months to 12 years. We have our own Myconian, Dr. Shauna Miller. She's a licensed school psychologist specializing in early education and early intervention with over 10 years of experience. We also have our international experts, Mrs. Deborah Santiago, who is the former of Caribbean Autism Support for Education, CASE, which is a nonprofit organization with a mission to support teachers, students, and families with autism. She has over 35 years of experience in the field and has focused on the study of autism and worked as an autism coach since 2013. And finally, we have Mrs. Marty Pyle, who is and no, I'm going to try not to mess this one up because I had to learn about the acronym before I came on. She is an exceptional student education support facilitator. She holds a bachelor's degree in elementary education and a master's degree in special education. Mrs. Marty has taught students with autism for over 18 years at all grade levels. She has taught at the high school level for 13 years. She has a passion to work with students with autism in the regular classroom setting and to help them to be successfully socially and academically. And she's also a part of CASE. So I want us to welcome our experts this afternoon. Before we jump in and we start asking our questions, I want us to just kind of go over some ground rules for how we're going to approach the session. So we want this to be a very interactive session. We want to give you, the audience, the opportunity to ask our panelists questions. And so what this is going to mean is when you have a question, we're expecting you're going to raise your hand. And in raising your hand, you're going to wait until you're acknowledged. And then once you're acknowledged, once I call your name, you go ahead, you open your microphone and you ask the question. You can direct it to the panelist or you can leave it open and I can direct it to the panelist. We're also asking that, sorry about that. So we're also asking that okay, so I'm going to pause a minute. Okay, sorry about the feedback. So we're going over the ground rules. And as I had mentioned, we're raising our hands first. We're waiting until we're acknowledged to ask the question. We will also want to make sure we get in as much questions as possible. So we're asking each participant to just limit to one verbal question. Any additional questions you can type in the chat, and if we have extra time, we can go back to it after. We're also asking that we keep our questions concise so that we can get to our answers, or we can get to it very clearly, and it can be very clear what it is we're trying to address. And the final thing is that we're hoping that we're going to have a very respectful session where, we discuss opinions. Sometimes opinions might differ from our own, so we just keep our responses, very respectful at this time. So now that we've covered the ground rules and we know who our panelists are, I'm going to open the floor now for questions from the audience. I'm going to give you a minute if you have any burning questions to start off with. If not, then I have a few here that I can start off with. So if anybody has a question in the audience, you can go ahead, you can raise your hand, and we can go ahead and start.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm not sure if you're seeing my hand.
Yes, I'm seeing you, Danny. You can go ahead.
All
I hope
right,
I
just
said it
one.
properly.
Oh, yeah, it's Danny. That's fine.
Great.
One thing to note, I had commented in a group, probably that's why there are not a lot of persons on it. The ID from the first flyer is different from this ID. So I'm not sure if everybody got that update. But to my question, I'm having troubles getting evaluations on time. Does that affect I guess, how well my child will perform? Because if it is that you do a test, if I do an evaluation in February, if I get it back in June, is that too late? Because I've heard persons that don't get them back until a year, and it affects how it is that you will tackle her needs and those things like that. So I want to know what's like a time frame for you to do an evaluation and to get back a response so you can do the necessary changes to help your child get where they need to go.
Okay, so for this one, I'm going to ask if Dr. Miller, if she's able to provide some insight, please.
Sure. I might ask some additional questions about what you mean by evaluation, because that could mean a lot of different things. But let's just say it's an assessment that you're seeking. Certainly there are lengthy delays in terms of return of reports in both at micro and in private institutions, and it can take a few months for you to get a report back. I would say you have to think about the primary purpose of the evaluation, right? And whether it's how much it's going to affect what's happening maybe in the classroom or interventions that are being made. In terms of classroom and interventions, the primary evaluations that should be done is really by whoever is performing the intervention, right? So in terms of informing what's happening in the classroom, you really need to get feedback from either teachers, or if the intervention is being done by a specific therapist, then that's the kind of feedback or evaluation or assessment that's going to be most meaningful in terms of trying to decide whether it's working, whether changes need to be made, etc. Assessments as performed, like say at Michael or in private institutions, a much more elaborate kind of overview looking at overall performance, primarily in the first instance to determine if there is a diagnosis, right? So this is often before a formal diagnosis is made. So it's kind of looking at the child's functioning in a number of different areas to kind of make a determination of what the diagnosis is. And then, of course, you have reassessments that occur over a period of years. You might want to check in after a few years after the diagnosis and see what's the current update. Those assessments are a little bit more comprehensive. So I'm not sure how much it can necessarily affect. I'm not sure how much that's going to affect the intervention that's happening, but it is going to give meaningful information about where the child is and any improvements that have been made over time. So what I'm saying is that for intervention that's happening within the classroom or with therapists, the primary evaluations is really from those people, whoever's performing the intervention, and then the comprehensive assessments, which yes, can be delayed. It's more of an update of overall functioning to see where the child is. Does that make sense?
All right, it makes sense, but what I'm trying to get at, if it is that I need help or I need to verify that my child indeed needs occupational therapy, I would need a document to state same. And in terms of the frequency and that, because what I realize sometimes when you have a verbal conversations, it is not 100% linked to what is in writing.
I think in those instances you should, I mean, whoever that may happen, I think you should absolutely, in those instances, you should follow up with the person who's doing the assessment just to clarify. We had this conversation. My understanding was that this is what was said, or this is what the information that was gathered. However, I don't think this is reflected in the report. You should always feel free to follow up. Don't feel like the document that you receive is can't be changed, or if you're not sure about what it's saying, you should always follow up. And if you have additional questions, absolutely go back to the person who performed an evaluation, say, I need further clarification. I'm not sure if this is what I understood from what it said.
Okay, all right, thank you. Well, I guess I am in an okay position now, but I guess for other persons who may have the question or are not on the webinar as yet, if it is that they need something in writing to verify with any institution that, hey, yes, you're probably thinking that everything is okay with the child, but she said this verbally, and probably, word of mouth doesn't go too far. But if you call the persons and they can give you something in a timely manner, sometimes it affects the flow of intervention and how you have persons supporting you either at home or at school. So that's why I was wondering, when is a realistic time and before it gets problematic?
Problematic. I think on average, I could be wrong. Anybody feel free to jump in. On average, about 60 days is about the turnaround time in most spaces. There are definitely places where it will be longer than that. Unfortunately, I don't know what can be done about that, to be honest. But on average, I'd say 60 days is about the turnaround time for an assessment report to be completed. Does anybody have any other thoughts? Feel free, like that's just off the top of my head what I think.
Sorry,
So
can
if
I
someone
just jump
thinks
in?
differently, let me know.
Yeah. So in terms of intervention, I personally don't require an assessment or a diagnosis to begin therapy, and I find that not many people are aware of that. I don't even need a referral form because we do our own evaluation to see where the kid is and what the goals and strengths and weaknesses are for that kid.
Yes. Does anybody else on the panel have any other thoughts related to this matter?
Yes, I think I could comment on that too. I tried to give a report back by, say, 10 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks. I'm hoping it doesn't take any longer than that. But, a lot of times when I do my feedback, before I hand back that report or give that report, I will find that parents are telling me at that point that some of the things that we saw at 10 weeks before, that things have changed now with the child. Sometimes it's because in your own discussion with them when they come for the assessment or the consultation, you are discussing things with them as they go along. So it's not unusual for them to come back and say, well, this is, child is now doing this, the child is now doing that. So, it is, I understand it to be, and I always say to the parents, these are symptoms we are dealing with. An intervention is going to make a difference, right? But if you have a report waiting for 6 months, right? I think she said even here, she's heard of people waiting a year. That is pretty extreme. And then what the profile of that child could have changed significantly during that period of time. So you really don't want to wait, I think, beyond 2, 3 months maximum, and sometimes there's a reason why it goes that far as well, you know. But yeah, you certainly should be waiting, I think, longer than that, because you want to be addressing the symptoms, and so that you are seeing the presentation of the child must be as current as possible if you are going to, be developing an intervention plan for the child, okay, or giving guidance for what is to happen in the school situation with that child. So that would be what I am thinking.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that what could probably help with this issue is more dialogue with the case manager or the person who is conducting the assessment, the timeline, the interventions, perhaps finding out if some of the interventions can start before the assessment report is completed. It also that the child does not lose out while the report is being complete. So I have a question here. Oh, I see another hand here. Okay, this person does not have their name on. So Samsung SM, you can go ahead. You can take it away and ask your question.
Hi, good afternoon. So my question is similar to the question that was asked before. I went to the micro assessment center in St. Anne and I did what was needed for my child. When I went back, the lady said that it will be done within 9 months to a year. But when I was on my way out, I saw a parent and the parent told me that she was on the list for 3 years. So I'm a bit concerned as a parent that my child was diagnosed with autism stage 3, but by Kids Clinic, there was a doctor there that diagnosed him. But I want to go through micro because schools are asking for an assessment from micro. But I am a bit concerned being that I was told that I would have had to wait 9 months to a year. I am trying to get my child into a school for September. So I would want more information on that as to what to do as a parent, because it is really hard on us already. And having to wait that long for a report and an assessment is ridiculous.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'll jump in again since I'm the psychologist from Michael, so I can best say it is really unfortunate. That's different from the waiting for the report after an assessment has been. This is just talking about just the wait time to get an assessment completed, which we are very, very aware that the timeline is really tragic, to be honest, right? And we have so many children on our waiting list in Kingston, in St. Anne, and in Mandeville. I'm not even sure. We constantly talk about what could possibly be the solution for that. The reality is that we have, I don't even know what the current number is, a lot of children on our waiting list, which is what is extending the wait time for assessments, unfortunately. And we don't have a good solution. We're open to suggestions always. But from Michael's perspective, we have, especially as we do continue to do more events and we become more and more known to people who are seeking assessments, our waiting list unfortunately gets longer and longer. And yes, you're correct that you do need to have the assessment done for schools. What I would suggest, since you actually have a diagnosis, sometimes I know from Kids Clinic, they do sometimes provide a written report. So I would start to try to seek that. Since you already have a diagnosis, I would try to get a written report from Kids Clinic and see if that assists in you kind of getting school placements.
Okay, because I do have the report. The report was emailed to me, and that would be great for somebody to actually get it and look at it instead of me waiting that long to be a part of the list. As you're saying, I mean, 3 years for that parent to tell me that she was on the list for 3 years. Her son is now 6, and she said she signed up from he was 3. That's very long for me to wait on another.
Yeah, I would say that's not necessarily typical. Sometimes things happen in terms of trying to reach parents and not following through, where the parent is unable to make the appointment that was made. I'd say It is a very long waiting list. I don't know what it is in St. Anne. It definitely is up to a year, I think, right now in Kingston. 3 years is atypical. Definitely very, very atypical. With the report, I'm saying is just bring it to the school or bring it to the ministry. Show them that you already have a report and see if they can assist with placement, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. And thank you very much for the questions that's been asked so far. Okay, so we have a question that came out from our parenting seminar. I think I'm going to address this to Miss Hodara, but I think anyone in the panelists who feels comfortable as well can jump in. So this parent was asking, how does one assist a preschooler who constantly keeps running towards the gate whenever it's open?
Where is this happening, at home or at school?
Well, no, there wasn't any other information that's provided, but I think it would be helpful if we could look at it in both respects, if that's possible.
Okay. So a kid that's constantly running to, I guess I'm assuming they're going to be running out of the gate when it's open. That's called elopement. And one way to prevent this is to, one, just be aware of the environment and make sure that the gate isn't left open without adult supervision around. Two, you can teach the kid a cue word to help them pause. I've worked with a kid who liked to play video games, and she also liked to elope, and she understood what pause meant in terms of the video game. So we taught that to her in real life. And so whenever we would see that she was running away, or she's in a situation where she could run away, we would say pause, which means she would freeze until we could get to her and guide her to a more safe environment. So that's one way. Another way is to have like visuals around that says no entry or no exit, or wait for an adult, or things like that. You can also read social stories about eloping, and how it's safe to walk with an adult and to hold hands and to not exit a house or a building without telling an adult or with an adult as well. I think Deborah also could probably chime in.
Yes, for our preschoolers, what we used to use is we'd teach them even the simple visual of the stop sign. So we'd have like the stop, that's the regular red stop sign. We'd stop at the door, at the school door. So it could be at the home door if it's happening. And we teach your children, this means not going, this means stop. So every time they're leaving the house, maybe they say, whoop, stop, wait for mommy, like something like a cue, stop, wait for the adult, stop, wait for daddy, stop, wherever you're doing it. So they know that when they see that, maybe starting from the inside of the house or the inside of the classroom, that stop sign was like permanently on that door. So we use, like I said, simple stop sign, but anytime they understand visuals very well. So any picture that you want them not to the thing, that whole circle with that line through it. So if it's you don't want to touch the stove, you might have on the stove a picture of the stove, but the circle with the line. And from very young age, from there in preschool, we teach them that means stop. So that's just to add on to what was just said. Right.
I can add on as well too. Joni, am I allowed to share screen?
We're working on it, Brittany.
Okay.
Good, you're good, you're good.
Okay, this is an example of, I am definitely a picture symbol type of person, because it just supports understanding so much to back up the verbal and the auditory. So this is just an example of no running. With pictures, I like to put this one, if I were to continue it further with my picture program, it would put do not run. So always pairing literacy with it as well too. But presenting this with the child to help them understand to do not run. And then when the instances that they do not run to the gates, providing a positive reinforcer behind it as well. And then also another point behaviorally, I would think, is to figure out, is there a specific situation that triggers the child to run to the gate and figuring out that why sometimes. Sometimes they're just runners, just to be runners. But also just figuring out maybe what is initiating this trigger of running. I always try and figure out the puzzle pieces, but the visual support, this is just an example of one.
Thank you for that, Brittany and Mrs. Santiago. I see a hand up in the chat. You can go ahead, Latoya.
Oh, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I just want to ask probably two questions, but the first one is there anyone on the panelists that can actually refer me to do some tests for my son in terms of vitamins level and and nutritional levels to see if there's any lead present in his body. Is there anyone on here who can actually make a referral for that testing? I have found a lab in Montego Bay who is able to facilitate me in May here coming. And is there anyone on the panelists, or do anyone on the panelists know of anyone who they could refer me for this specific issue that I'm facing?
But I'm just, my thinking right away is, do you have a pediatrician? Because your pediatrician could do that referral.
Okay, but do you know of anyone who could read these results when they are done and make reference into how do I fulfill the shortcomings of what those tests will show?
I don't know, maybe the nutritionist, the pediatrician would have a pretty good idea, I think, but also they might refer you on to a nutritionist as well.
Because I found this, what do they call them now? This doctor in America, she can do it, but the price is really high. So she was the one who recommended those tests for my son. But the tests were supposed to go abroad, but I didn't stop researching until I found a lab here that could do it. But the other issue would be for somebody to read it, to tell me what it's actually saying, because I understand from her, because she's a specialist in the US, that those markers, which are the amino acid levels and the lead present in our kids' blood and all of that, could be leading to some of the setbacks that they're having. So I am a parent who is really on the natural aspect of the spectrum with my son, and I have applied a lot of what I have learned so far, and I've gotten tremendous results from it and intend to stay on that course. So I would really want to know if there's anything that I could get locally. I will do with my pediatrician, yes, to see if he could do the referral, but the issue would be with the reading of the results and the references to those results.
Okay, from what I'm hearing from the panelists, it doesn't sound like anyone knows anyone specifically here who is able to offer that service. But I will tack on to what Dr. Watson Campbell said in terms of following up with the specialists who will be able to order those tests and interpret them. So you're welcome. We have another hand up. I see Katie and Silvera. You can go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My question is, I have a referral for my son to do ABA therapy, and I'm trying to find somewhere. I don't know if anyone on the panel can tell me where I can go, because I have to go to UA, bring back the results to UA, but that's in July, because I have 3 tests to do: the hearing screening, the ABA, and blood test. But is the ABA therapy now? I'm trying to find somewhere. I called one. I don't remember what the other one was telling, honestly. Sorry. So I'm just asking if anybody can tell me where I can call or go and how it's done, what I'm supposed to do if I'm to bring him with me.
I guess I'll answer that. Um, I am a behavioral therapist. I do ABA. And there are two other places that also do, well, three other places that also do ABA. I believe Macam still offers ABA, and Therapy Plus offers ABA, and Patricia Williams offers ABA. The challenge is we all have wait lists, very long wait lists. My wait list right now is over 150 people waiting. So I would suggest that you contact all the numbers that you have and get on a wait list. And whoever contacts you first, you would just go to them, which I don't know if you'll get that before July.
Before, okay, understand. Okay. And quickly, the second question is that I at school, he's at school, but he has a shadow at school, but I think I don't know what is happening because I assume that the ABA, what I say, it was the applied behavioral thing. I'm saying that I don't know if he has to do that first to really change some little ways that he has, because he's at school, as I say, with a shadow. I get, like, for today, I get called in today at school. He and his teacher was in a brawl because what the teacher said to me that she gave him a number and a number on a card. Each student gets a number, and he wants to put the number. He put the number on another student desk. She's putting it back on his desk, but he don't want it on his desk. He finished with it, so he might put it on the little girl desk. So him get up with himself and start fire lick on her, and the man start scream no, and they just set the work on the board and start cry. When I go cry, was not scream, sit down. The teacher have to sit on him and so forth. And I even I break down because I started to cry and say, I don't know how much more this really can take. Even though I know the situation, yes, this child is diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, but it was I feel so bad and embarrassed today that I even got him and I said, I hold him and I said, listen, and my finger even catch him in his eye because right now his eye is red because my finger catch him in his eye, and because it was so all over the place. So I don't even know what to do and what to say and how to even tell persons at school to really, I don't even know what to do. And he has a style, the school, it's too noisy. I don't want to go to school today. Why? It's too noisy. And I said, but that is school. But he don't have a problem at lunchtime with the noise because he makes a lot of noise back and forth. I have some funny noise where he can just play by himself. And but in class, when they're making the noise in class, he's saying that, go tell them to sit down. They're too noisy. And I said, but Daniel, you can't. There are kids like you. There are small children like you. There are 6 and 7-year-olds like you. They have to make noise. Well, I can't take this. It's too difficult. If the work, it's too difficult. It's impossible to finish this work. And him start, when they say, Daniel, you have to finish the work. Then him start get angry, broke the pencil, threw up the book. I'm going to leave. And I said, all right, okay, you're going to leave. But I know that when the work becomes too much, like because they get 3 work, they get the integrated studies, the maths and the language arts. And he will do the maths and he will finish, he will do another one again. This is too much, I can't, this is impossible. And I know that he don't like to write. He will write, but he don't like write. But at times, for him to even finish the work on time, and to even get him to do the work, you have to walk him. You have to tell him, say, all right, we're going over by the infant side, on the swing, but you have to finish the work first. Okay, before you get the snack, you have to do this first. And, so I don't know if, in the meantime, I don't know if the therapy will help, but in the meantime, I don't know what to do or how to do it, or even where to turn for help.
Okay. So the thing with ABA is that it's doable. We can train people to implement procedures and techniques that can help in the classroom, especially if you already have a shadow. And I also believe the Ministry of Education offers shadow training as well to help let her know how to handle him in the classroom. One thing that I would consider is speaking with the teacher and seeing what kind of academic accommodations can happen. Maybe the shadow can assist with writing some of the notes for him or doing some of the written work for him. As a writer, he will tell her what to write and she will write it. An accommodation like that, noise canceling headphones during class time can be an option as well. And, if there's, I don't know what your school is like, but maybe he can be pulled out for certain academic classes and work in a different environment that's quieter. But those are some options. But first, I would speak to the teacher about having some academic accommodations for him, whether that means doing less questions or having somebody else write for him, such as his shadow as well.
Yeah, thank you. And quickly again, now that you touch on pulling me out for him to do the work. That happened the other day at the test, the end of term, yes, the end of term test. He finished the first 3 papers, but it's 8 papers they have to do. This is 3, the first 3. When the others, no, it's too difficult. This too much, no more. And everybody else finished. He was the last one. What the teacher have to do, she said to me, she have to take him over with the paper over by the infant side, put him in a class by himself, and that is where he finishes the test.
Yeah, I mean, verbal responses are also an option that you can speak to his teacher about and just see if they can amend how they assess him as well. And if you have an assessment report, some of those accommodations should be in that report as well.
Okay. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
May I make a comment as well?
Yes.
All right. So one of the things that I think we do not attend to with the children on the autism spectrum is the sensory integration difficulties that they have. Most children on the autism spectrum have sensory integration dysfunction. They have a problem with the way they are able to accommodate different sensory input from their environment. So he's talking about the noise. So it is possibly a fact that he is overloaded with the sounds within the room, because it is, there's a lot of noise going on, and this is likely to be causing him discomfort. When he's in the classroom and he's just surrounded by it, it is harder for him than to go outside. When he's outside, that sound is diffused in the atmosphere. It's not going to be as intense. And certainly in terms of, oral stimulation, making his own sounds, that's his way of probably playing and so on as well. Even the way he is trying not to, write, not trying, but he doesn't like to write. That could be a sensory-based problem as well, right?
Okay.
So, just being able to put pressure on the pencil or to accommodate something like that in his hand. So this is one of the things I think is left out a lot when children are diagnosed to be on the autism spectrum. that sensory side of things is what triggers a lot of the behaviors as well. But they tend not to have attention paid to that. So as an occupational therapist, that is something that we would tend to focus on. And sometimes even low muscle tone can cause a problem with that child. Just being able to sit up and attend, hold themselves upright for the extended period of time, fatigue sets in. So, the assessment is a lot more than just coming up with a diagnosis. We have to look at what are the attending symptoms and what is the origin of them. What are the underlying reasons for these, for this presentation? So, I would say that is an aspect of this presentation that should have to be looked at.
Thank you.
I have a comment as well. I have another comment kind of piggyback on that too. To get his motivation level up, you can use like color timers so he knows what amount of time to anticipate to work. I'm going to give you an example of one that you can just set this on his desk. Hold on one second. And especially since he has a shadow. So you can put something like this on his desk, set it for whatever amount of time, since he doesn't like writing, whatever amount of time you want him to write, so that he knows, hey, like it's not that much longer. Let me keep going. It's not that much longer. And then also you can use first then board with, for example, like first you're going to write, and then once the timer ticks out of time and you're done writing, then you get a positive reinforcer. And the shadow can just give him, reset the timer for a minute or two of whatever positive reinforcer it is. I don't like to attach food to everything with children. Maybe if there's like a little puzzle or something to get it, that he can act as multisensory with for that 1 or 2 minutes, and then he goes back to work. So the first then boards are good for that. And then also just giving him a visual of how long he needs to work for a task that he doesn't want to do.
Yes.
And just to jump in also, that ideally, is there a
Can I just add as well very quickly? Very quickly. Sorry, just very quickly that McCam does do training of centers as well. Well, we call them centers, the shadows. So yeah, that is another place where training can be done. I think Jamie mentioned it earlier in the ministry. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, and I noticed here that someone else in the chat mentioned, could he potentially get extra time to complete his test? Because maybe he has test anxiety. Does anybody on the panel have any thoughts about this?
I was going to ask, is a specific, once they're diagnosed, is there a specific plan that's written for them at the school for the child? Once they have the actual autism diagnosis and they've gotten the shadow, is there like an educational plan written specifically for the child or no?
For this one, I won't be able to answer it directly. I don't know if anybody on the chat
But
has
generally.
the feedback.
It's not standard practice like how it's in the States where you move from assessment to an IEP.
Yeah.
There are schools that will write an IIP, I forget what it stands for right now, but it's definitely not standard or
because that would, would be a good practice with the teacher and even just whoever evaluated them, just to have like a plan. So all these things, just as something to think about. So all these recommendations, especially once a teacher sees the child, sees the behaviors, knows what it is. When you have that team that we're doing now to help you say, we're going to give him this, we're going to provide him with a schedule so he knows what's coming next. We're going to provide him with the first then. So that would be kind of somewhere to go in the future so that the teacher has a toolkit to start, you know what I mean? That the teacher has something to start with to help them with the accommodations.
Yes.
Sorry,
And sorry.
can I just?
Sure,
I'm so
go ahead.
sorry. I'm just going to say that, yeah, the IEPs, that's 9 times out of 10, that's not done because the team is not there to help to write the IEP. And the IIP is the individual intervention plan that is written by the therapist who is working with the child. But the IEP, the education plan, is where the problem usually lies.
Yes. And to answer your question, Monique, I do think it's a potential that this child could get extra time. It would also depend on the assessment findings and whether or not the child qualified for extra time based on the assessment that was completed. All right, so Mar Dawkins has been waiting patiently, and I realize that he or she has been actually very vocal in the chat. So you can go ahead and just ask your question now.
Hi, afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the noisy background in advance. All right, mine is a quick one. I am about to homeschool my 10-year-old, and the plan is, of course, to hire someone to assist us with the actual teaching. But is there any support that we can get from the ministry, from Michael, at all to just sort of, assist us with getting off the ground, assist us with, monitoring and feedback or anything of that nature?
To me, that kind of sounds like it's more ministry, but I don't know if anyone on the panel. Shawnee, have any thoughts about it, Dr. Miller?
Yeah, and I'm not sure what I would check with the ministry in terms of what their support plans are. I'm not sure. In terms of Michael, we primarily do assessments. You could always, bearing in mind the wait list that we just talked about, you could always sign up for an assessment so that you can get an overview of where the child is academically and where their functioning is across the board. Just know that it wouldn't be within a few months. You'd have to wait for a while. But you could put that as part of your plan that I will get an assessment to kind of see where things are. But I would check with the ministry. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on homeschools and what the ministry provides.
I'm not sure what the ministry provides, but I do know there's a homeschool association that has a wide range of information that they can provide to you, and they also do events, like they have sports day and they have field trips that they do with kids that are homeschooled. So you can find, I don't have any information about it, but I do know that there is an association out there that provides a lot of information for parents who are starting homeschool.
Right. So regarding the assessments, I am on the waiting list. I am nearing my 1-year mark. So I am hoping to get the assessment, as well as we're on the waiting list for speech therapy. So we're on 2 waiting lists with Michael. So that's definitely a part of the plan. Regarding the homeschool association, I'm not sure if anyone on the call, perhaps a parent or so, can provide any additional number, because I reached out to them via email, reached out to them on their social media, and I'm not getting any response. I'm not sure if they're still active or what, but I'm not getting through.
Okay, so I have some feedback here. Our director, Dr. Anderson Morgan, has pointed out in the chat that you need to register with the independent schools unit in the ministry to do homeschooling. There is another person in the chat who mentioned that there is a registry of homeschooling teachers, and there are a couple of persons who are talking about going to the special education unit. So it's really sounding like their start point is at the ministry and going to the independent schools and moving from there.
Right, and I am in that process. I got all the documents from them and everything, so I'm definitely going through that process there. It's sounding like I may have to go back to the Ministry of Special Education and just see if they have any support. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for keeping the questions going so far, guys. I mean, I'm learning a lot. I can personally say that I didn't think about the sensory issues with writing, and thinking about that with our autistic children, even in assessing and thinking about our rights. I really didn't think about it like that. So I'm also learning from this panel. I have a question here. This was coming out of our parenting workshop. I'm going to throw this out to you, Brittany. This person was saying that they're concerned about their child's echolalia. they were previously told that they shouldn't prompt the child. They shouldn't prompt, sorry, the correct response and block the repetitive responses as much as possible. So, for example, no, repeating, stop, you can't, and then it's C in quotation. I don't know if this is a sound when you ask ab, if that makes any sense. So it sounds like the question is pertaining to echolalia and whether or not you should block it or whether or not you should allow the child to continue by prompting them with the correct response. Do you have any thoughts around that?
I do. All right. So with echolalia, which is, it's a characteristic of ASD, I look at it as them, that's how they are learning language. And I try and use it as a window of opportunity. So I look at one, and I'm going to go back to why. I always try and figure out the why puzzle piece. Why are they doing this? And most of the time, it's due to lack of understanding, on inability to be able to respond to, if you're maybe asking a question, what do you want to eat? You want apple or banana? And then repeat, what do you want to eat? You want apple or banana? So I look at it as most times it's a lack of understanding. So what I try to do with that is, whether it be an instruction or a question that they're repeating back, I try to condense what I'm saying to make it shorter, to see if they better understand that with when I shorten it, especially when it's in an instruction. And then if they still are repeating, I go to cueing methods like tactile cueing, hand over hand assistance. If it's an instruction, taking their hand, going step by step to help them understand that this is what I'm asking you, or this is what I'm instructing you to do. So I look at it mainly as lack of understanding. I try not to, I don't want to tell them, oh, stop, 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 or repeat back what they're saying. I then go with the prompting. And then also when it comes to questions, when they're repeating back questions, especially WH, like what, where, when, why questions, I try and simplify the question to a yes, no question, because that's much more easier to understand. And then I start the teaching level at understanding yes, no questions, and then going from there to help with their lack of understanding. I hope I fully answered the question.
Yes, you did. So the simplifications seem to be one of the key ways to go about it in addressing this behavior. And just for anybody who is on the chat who doesn't understand what echolalia is, because I know I used the term and I didn't define it, so I apologize for that. Could you give us a little bit of, or tell us a little bit, sorry, Brittany, about what it is?
So it's where the child is repeating back what is being said. So it's literally like, just like the name echolalia, it's where they produce an echo of what you say.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. We have another question here. This one I think is open to anyone. Perhaps somebody who is more involved in education can tackle it, but it's really open to anyone. So do you have any tips to reduce or prevent bullying in schools towards our neurodivergent children?
I would say that at a school, I used to always have sensitivity trainings. So part of what I did when I was, I'm retired, but when I was an autism coach, I did a lot of sensitivity trainings. I would go to class or have assemblies, and I would explain to them, I would explain to the students about autism. So sometimes children can do things because they might see a behavior and, and they're like, oh, look how that child is, and they might just look how that child is behaving, and they may come off mean. But a lot of times, if you explain to children what's happening, why the things that they're seeing looks different to them, sometimes that cuts it down, because you're kind of teaches them empathy, you're giving them information, you're making them wise to what is happening. So that would be the very first route I would take in a school setting. I don't know if Marty, maybe you'd want to address at an older, and I don't know the age of this child. Did they tell you? I wasn't sure of the age, but maybe Marty could speak for the older kids.
I agree with what you're saying. I think it's a lot of training of the teachers on how to handle it. And then the teachers are able to address the students in the classroom. A lot of times, if one of our students was out of the classroom for some reason, the teachers would take that opportunity to try to explain to the rest of the students the behaviors they're seeing, how to respond to it. I also think, since I taught mainly high school students, by the time the students get to that age, they've been around students with autism and other disabilities throughout the years, and it starts to lessen as time goes on, is what I found. They're able to relate to them. They've been around them for years. And so that seems to decrease from what I saw when they get to high school.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for that feedback. I'm seeing a couple of questions in the chat here. They sound like they're very sensory related. So the first one I saw, one of our participants was asking or was saying that her child loves to drop things on and to touch her toes. And so she wanted to find out if there's anything that can be done to stop that behavior. This sounds like you, Miss Hadara.
I mean, that sounds like there's a movement right now coming away from blocking and stopping self-stimulatory behaviors, because they say the purpose is to make the kids self-regulate and to be calm and to feel comfortable in the environment. So if the behavior is not impeding daily functioning, if it's not preventing them from focusing at school or from following instructions at home, I would say the kid is okay to touch his toes and to drop items. And also, I mean, you can also use it as a game and join in, and it can become more of a people game. Like, you can start dropping things, you can pick up the things that they're dropping, and you can use it as a method of interacting and connecting with your kid as well. And you can turn it into a game, and so it's no longer them doing it by themselves, it's them you can do turn taking with it, sharing all kinds of things that you can do to engage the kid when they are doing that type of behavior.
And I would say, when I hear about the dropping of the things, it could be a cause and effect thing. So sometimes our kids are, they want to see what happens if they do things. Like, if I drop a glass, it breaks. But if I drop a ball, it bounces. But if I drop a teddy bear, it just lands. Sometimes it could even be like cause and effect. And so maybe you might want to try getting that child like cause and effect toys, like things that you twist, make sounds with, or things that, toys that give a cause and effect kind of.
Yeah, you can figure out what purpose the behavior is serving, and then you can find what you would consider a more appropriate way of them achieving that goal.
Right.
If it is a cause and effect, you can get a cause and effect toy. If it's, jumping, you can get them a trampoline, anything to get that same, movement and feedback.
And replace the behavior that might not be appropriate, or might, because if you drop the glass, it will break, but you want to try and replace that behavior.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So it's sounding like we don't want to block the behaviors, as you said, but we want to find a way to incorporate it. All right. So another question, it's another sensory one. Good evening. My daughter is almost 3 and doesn't eat food, meaning she will have her snacks and juice. She'll drink her porridge, but only does this from a bottle. When I try to give her food or anything from a plate or spoon, she'll run away and say no. If we do get the food in her mouth, she'll not swallow. She will cry until it's removed. And this parent is asking for any suggestions on how to get her to eat.
First thing I would do is to make sure that she's checked out and that she has all of the abilities to swallow and chew, and she knows how to do all of those things. And second, to not stop introducing her to new foods, to have meal times at the table if possible, and at a set time, so that she sees everybody eating and everybody's at the table eating, and to offer, say you have a family style dinner every evening, so you would offer some of her safe foods among the other foods that are on the table so that and you would also eat those so that she sees that, you're eating her food, maybe she can try and eat the other food. But the first thing would be just to check to make sure that everything is okay physically with her. And I'm pretty sure Brittany might be better at answering.
Yeah, part of that is speech therapy scope. I'm going to be honest, I have not done swallowing therapy in a while, but you want to make sure that oral motor is functioning properly. And then paying attention to also the why is she choking, gagging during meal times. Maybe that's the reason something dysfunction muscle wise in the throat. Also with that, I would say with feeding therapy, you don't ever want to force something down your child's mouth because that is going to create a negative just a negative environment for them where they're not going. It's trauma. It's traumatizing to them. Think about it. If someone were to try and force something down your mouth, what would you do? So always with feeding therapy, it's very sensitive. You always want to create with anything a very positive environment, and you don't want to force it down their mouth. And then you also just want to make it fun. So this is just an example. I haven't done feeding therapy since my first year being a speech therapist, but this is some of the stuff that I used to do. For example, like pancakes. Make it fun, put it on the plate, make it into a monkey, and then provide language stimulation as you're doing this. So you're tackling a lot of goals at one time. So like, okay, so you present them with this, say you want them to eat pancakes. I know this is more an Americanized type of meal, but you want them to eat pancakes and banana. And so sing the Five Little Monkeys song, Jumping on the Bed, put music into it, provide language stimulation, make it fun. So you always want to, and also getting him or her to just try and touch the food first. Just touch it. You model the touching. If they don't want to touch it with their finger, then like get them to just touch it with the fork. And then you take it from there. So little baby steps. And then you can take maybe a little bit of whatever the food is, and then just kind of work it from their hand up their arm slowly, and then, to their mouth. So, I mean, if they allow it, but always pay attention to what your child allows and does not allow. So that you can respect them as a person as well, too, as you're trying to get them to eat.
But I would say the most important thing is consistency and repeated exposure. If they don't like it one time, doesn't mean that they'll never like it. So to continuously expose them to the food and to, new things. And, family meals is a great way to do that and to celebrate small wins. So if it's the first time they've ever touched a pancake, make a big deal about it.
May I say something as well? I think this sensory aspect of it, I agree with everything everybody has said. I just want to say, though, that I've also noticed that it's definitely texture and taste. That's a big thing with what a child will eat, right? So once everything is going on all right, the oral motor area and swallowing and all of that kind of thing, I have found that through exposure to working with different types of textures of materials, although it sounds like there's no connection, because you find when you talk to parents, you might hear that they only eat soft things, or they only eat hard things, or it's like particular things that they will eat that has to do with texture as much as it might be with taste. So that introduction to just working with a range of materials we find in therapy seem to lead also into some kind of accommodation, which I really don't know the exact connection, but it seems to me that the brain then seems to accommodate textures in food better as well. So in therapy, we tend to expose them to a range of sensory experiences through touch and, mostly textures really that seem to have flow over into them accommodating more textures in eating as well.
Thank you so much for that. We are getting very close to the end, guys. I just want to point out that Dr. Anderson Morgan has put some resources in the chat. She's put in the autism guide and she's also put in the speech booklet as well. So feel free to download and to access those resources. I see one more question, so I'm gonna throw it out to the panel, and then I'm gonna give each person to just give a wrap up their, final thoughts, any take homes that they have or any advice they have to give for our participants. So the question here is, how do you discipline an autistic child who is always screaming? I hate to be calling on you, Jamie, but it feels like a you question.
No, that's okay.
I honestly feel anybody on this panel is equipped, including Mrs. Pyle, to address this.
Okay, always screaming. I mean, this goes back to what Brittany has been saying literally the entire time is find out why. Why are they screaming? Are they screaming for attention? Are they screaming to avoid something? Are they screaming because they like how the scream sounds? And to address that behavior, it differs for each reason. So if they're screaming for attention, you give them attention in a non-contingent way, which means that basically it means that you catch them while they're good. So if you see them playing quietly by themselves, you might go and pat them on the head and say, "Wow, I really like how you're playing so quietly. Can I join you?" Or, something like that. Just you're constantly giving them attention so that they don't need to scream to get your attention. If they're screaming to avoid a task, then you can teach them a replacement behavior. You can teach them to ask for a break or to ask to do it later, or you can find a different way to present the task so it doesn't seem as demanding. You can break it down to smaller steps and give them one step at a time. If they're screaming because they like how it sounds, then again, that's really tricky to address. You can address it by, maybe trying different tones and music that they might also like the sound of, and that might minimize the screaming. But the first thing is to really understand why the kid is screaming. And sometimes if they are screaming for attention and you discipline them after they scream, you're essentially giving them that attention. So they're going to start screaming more. So if they're screaming because they want your attention, and every time they scream, you turn and tell them to stop or no, or to go to their room or to do this or no TV, no that, that's essentially giving them attention and giving them what they want for screaming, and it will increase how often they scream. So in order to know why they're screaming, look at what's happening before they're screaming. Or did you just place a demand on them? And if you did, then they're screaming to avoid a task. Were you maybe on the phone for the previous 10 minutes and ignoring them? Or were you cooking and ignoring them? And if that's the case, then maybe they're screaming for attention. And if they're screaming just randomly throughout many different environments, you can't pinpoint a reason, then they're screaming because they like how it sounds. I hope that answers that question.
Yes, at least I think it does. Does anybody else on the panel have any feedback? Doesn't sound that way. All right. So I want to just give us each person on the panel just a little bit of time so you can just give your final thoughts, a wrap up. If you have a moment, a message that you want to send out, I'm gonna just open it right now to our panelists to go ahead. So who would like to start? I think we'll start. Jamie, you're already in front of me.
I'll start.
Okay, good. Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Give Jamie a break.
Yes.
I'll start. I would say to all our parents who have children, especially young children in the school or even older children, to remember that you are your child's most important advocate, and you know about your child the most. And whatever information you can give the teacher about your child, about their likes, about their dislikes, that they don't like noise, any information that you can give the child before or at the beginning of the school year, so that the teacher already has like a background on your child, is helpful. So because a lot of times as teachers are going, they're learning, oh my gosh, he's doing this. Why is he doing that? Or why is she doing this? But if you know your child and you can go in and say, I'd like to have a conference with you. I would like to tell you he is diagnosed or she is diagnosed with autism. And I want to kind of give you a little background, the things that I see that he likes, that he doesn't like, the things that he eats, like do it from the beginning, from the start. And it will kind of help. So even if the teacher doesn't have a specific plan that's written for her, it will make them start saying, okay, I know this child is triggered by loud noises. What am I going to do? Okay, let me see if I can get a noise canceling headphones. Give them you give them the information before the child even begins the classroom. That will make us a smoother year for the child, the teacher, and for the family. That's my little bit of.
Similar to what I was going to say, just from the perspective of assessment, even with the drawbacks around assessments and the long waiting times.
Are you hearing me? Because I'm in a little difficult area.
Can you hold on 1 second, Dr. Watson Campbell? Dr. Miller was on the floor. So we'll get to you right after.
So I was going to say that in an assessment, as you go for assessments, feel free to be an advocate just as much as Deborah was just suggesting for in the classroom. Always give as much information as possible to whoever you're doing the assessment, because it really will help inform not just the results, but the recommendations, so that as we talked about what might be helpful in the classroom, what may be helpful at home, doing the assessment, is the better information that we'll get out of the assessment, the better the recommendations with me will be. So I just really strongly encourage you to not see it as a passive operation, but really be as active and advocate for your child as much as possible. My second thing is just always, in all these discussions, I always say to parents that you have a lot of power. And the more that you are connected, connection is one of the greatest things that you can do for intervention. Just being present, having a very strong, affectionate relationship really powers great deals of growth. So I always encourage parents to do that.
Thank you for that, Dr. Miller. Before I go to the other panelists, I'd just like to remind our participants, we have in the chat or feedback, we're asking you to just complete the form, the feedback form, for you to give us some feedback on the session so we're able to cater better to your needs for future sessions. Also in the chat is a Zoom link for a Ministry of Education, a JTA, sorry, Jamaica Teachers Association meeting. So it would give you a better place as well to air some of the questions that we weren't able to answer. This would also be a good place for it. And it's gonna start right after we're finished with this session. So I'm gonna hand over to you now, Dr. Campbell, for your thoughts.
Right. I kind of missed out on what some persons were saying because I was in a bad place on the road. Anyway, I think I caught the last part about empowering parents being empowered. And I think I would want to piggyback right on that. I'm finding that parents are coming to assessments, interventions, much more informed now, because they are going online, they are reading, and they are gathering a lot of information so that when they come to you, they come with, questions and so on. And it really is a good thing, I think, that parents can do that. Just make sure that you are, gaining as much information as possible. Because I think I heard somebody saying about sharing with the person who is doing the assessment or teachers. And yes, there's a lot that parents do know about their children, and there's a lot that they can learn. if they go online and just equip themselves as best as possible with information that can help. All right, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Watson Campbell. Mrs.
I'll go
Pyle?
next, Joni. Oh,
Oh,
no.
okay.
No.
Well, you can go ahead, Brittany.
All right. I would say, as a speech language pathologist, communication is a survival skill. It is essential to really thrive in this world. I mean, we do it all day, every day. So as parents get frustrated when their children have speech language communication deficits, because it really, really affects their child's quality of life and the family's quality of life as well, too. And so what I would say is, until you can get access to speech language therapy, try to make communication as fun as you can for your child. Teach communication in a multi-sensory dimension, with touch, feel, see, smell. Learning does not always have to occur at a desk with a worksheet in a structured activity. Learning can occur when you take your child to the supermarket and you're naming foods as you're going down the aisle. So try and fit in communication as much as you can in activities of daily living, because that's the most functional, and it pulls less from you as a parent because you can just embed it into what you're already doing. To me, with communication, functionality is the key. And so until you can get a speech pathologist, Google, get online, get on YouTube. There's so much there, so many ideas and so much free activities, until you can get what you need. But yeah, that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Brittany.
My final thoughts are, I mean, from a therapeutic perspective, it's consistency. Whatever you're doing to help your kid, be consistent with it. If you're attending therapy, attend consistently. If you've implemented some procedure, your school has asked you to implement something, or your therapist has asked you to implement something, be consistent with it.
I would say I know that a lot of this was geared towards younger students, and the majority of my experience is with older upper grades. But I would say two things that really help, especially as the students are moving into the upper grades. One is routine, to have a daily schedule, and you as a parent at home reinforce that schedule. If you know there's going to be a change in that schedule, something's happening at school, or they're going to be missing part of the day, prepare your student for that. The more prepared they are and know that there's going to be a change, the better off they're going to be and able to handle it. One other thing, especially as students move up through school, is organization is a big issue. So you at home as a parent can help by organizing their homework, going through their backpack, anything to help them just stay organized and on track and not get behind. I would say those are suggestions that I have.
Thank you so much. So we are almost at 6 o'clock. I really want to thank our panelists for dedicating their time and their knowledge. I want to thank the participants as well for asking your questions. We want to remind you that the feedback form is in the chat. Please, please, please complete it, because when we get your feedback, we're able to plan our sessions to meet your needs, and we really are trying to meet you halfway. So I really want to thank everyone on behalf of the Michael family, and I'd like to extend to the participants, because you are now a part of the Michael family. Thank you so much for coming to this session. Again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you to all of the persons who made this session possible. We're looking forward to having more sessions like this. We want to remind you that just because a session has ended, this doesn't mean that the dialogue ends. We here at the center are here. Parents come, they call, they get feedback. We've created resources, and we want to continue to extend that line to persons and to our families, so we can help our children with autism. not autistic children, but children with autism. So thank you very much for this session and have a good afternoon, evening, night, depending on the time of day. Bye.